Oh my gosh, what are we doing? I don't know. Hey there, everyone. This is Travis, and I'm back with another Whiny Parent podcast, ready to talk about another episode of one of the best TV shows of all time, Fringe. I absolutely love this show. So if you haven't watched Fringe and you don't want to be spoiled ahead of time, go ahead, go out, find it in the world, watch it, come back, and this will be sitting here waiting for you to listen to it. So don't worry about missing my thoughts right now. You can come back to it later. Fringe, right now, I'm able to watch through the IMDb app, which I can watch for free with very limited commercials. So if you have the ability to check out Fringe through the IMDb app, that is a free option right now. Okay, so let's dive into episode 6, which is called The Cure. And this episode, I don't know if any other show does as good of a job as pulling a viewer into a plot than what the creators of Fringe have done. The show gives these crazy scenarios that are absolutely mysterious and sometimes devastating to watch. And this episode is one of them. So The Cure, this episode, opens with a woman being dumped out of the back of a vehicle. She's clearly disoriented. And so she finds herself basically wandering down the middle of the street where cars are honking at her. So she walks into a diner. It's clear she's in need of help. She has abrasions on her wrists from being tied down. The waiter starts talking to her, but she can't really remember who she is. And so someone from the diner calls the police, and an officer kind of arrives soon after. And he starts questioning her, and she's starting getting frazzled, and then she gets really upset. And so he was, I guess, the best he can do. It's trying to calm her down. And when she's not, he puts handcuffs on her. And as she's freaking out, all of a sudden, all bloody hell breaks loose. They go from one person in the diner to the next and the next, and people are just starting to scream in pain as blood pours out of their eyes. Uh, this is absolutely crazy to see. And then finally, we get to the officer who's the last one to start screaming in pain. And at this point, the woman who doesn't know who she is, starts bleeding from her eyes, and she starts screaming. It's what happens next is a real head turner. Poor choice of words. Uh, her head literally explodes, and now she doesn't have one. And if you didn't already know or couldn't guess by now, everyone in Diner is dead. Cut to that amazing intro. It's just, you see a scene like that. How are you not instantly wondering what the frack is going on? How is this possible? And that's why I love the show. It sucks you in, and you get to see the inner workings of the Fringe team doing their thing, trying to solve a problem, and then you get all of the interesting interpersonal relationships that are going on between characters. Especially in this episode, we have moments between Peter and Olivia. You have some of like Walter's kookiness, even at the end of the episode, where Peter has to remind him to use the right colored toothbrush, white for Walter. That's me. And it's just, so you have this wonderful blend of things that just make this show magical. So this episode has an amazing story, because not only like the French team's trying to solve this mystery, but you get to get a look into Olivia Dunham's backstory. Um, we learn about an abusive stepfather that she shot when she was only 9 years old. Um, and that's devastating to think of a 9 year old being put in that position. And she tells Peter that after recovering in the hospital, he escaped. And not only has no one ever seen him again, she gets a birthday card every single year from him since the year that he escaped. Um, Basically, just to let her know that he's still out there. And how messed up is that? That whole situation. So we don't find this out until maybe I think halfway through the episode. And leading up to that, it's clear that she's annoyed by, I think, everyone she encounters up until this point where she explains her family history to Peter. Um, and she also like puts her boss, Philip Royals, in a position where he has to kind of defend the department because she kind of unofficially interrogates this. So it's a person of interest. He's like the head of a multi-billion-dollar company, and they believe that this person, is maybe somehow tied to it, and maybe responsible for another woman who is missing. So Olivia feels like they're on a time restraint, and she believes that he's guilty, and um, so they're butting heads. So it's clear that Broyles is annoyed that she did this like unofficial interrogation. Um, and Dunham is clearly annoyed that she has to explain herself. And one of the best lines in this episode is when she asks um, if if there's anything else that he would like for her to run past him. And his line, I think, is about as shut down a line as you can have, because he basically just says, "Not anything, everything." I'll tell you right now, that would have shut me up too. So, they don't have too many. Like their first episode, there was a lot of tension between them, and and for the most part, they seem to get along really well. And there are moments like this where they have this snippiness with each other. So to kind of like go back and discuss the whole episode, kind of like the main plot. So you get this background with Olivia. It's really interesting. It kind of understands what drives her because she talks about how she understands that her stepfather isn't responsible for all the bad things in the world. But he did do some awful things. And so you can understand why she is perhaps in law enforcement and why she wants to help protect other people, solve these mysteries, solve crimes, and help other people. So there is a good connection to understand how Olivia Dunham ticks. So the main plot revolving around the bleeding eyes and the exploding head leads to discovering who this woman is, and another woman, the one that's missing, who both have this autoimmune disease that's uncurable. Except the woman who died was apparently in remission somehow, which obviously the Fringe team is like, well, how is that possible? So they have to go into try to figure out, okay, test her blood, try to figure out what could possibly be in there as a clue to determining how she is in remission or was in remission. And the other woman who is missing is also in remission. So the people involved with the abduction had started treating these women with like time activated medication that helps cure their disease. But they can apparently add another chemical or medicine to their blood that basically turns them into a weapon. Um, So whoever is behind this, they intend on selling the missing woman so that she can be used in whatever crime is about to happen. Um, so for this episode, Fringe doesn't go into, okay, well, who was planning on using her? They only focus on the sniveling weasel who's behind it, who absolutely believes he's untouchable. And I absolutely hate those types of characters. It's the type of arrogance that makes you want to throw a book at the television. What I might love most is that Dunham doesn't back down from this guy. Um, so, along the way, they kind of track the facility down where they're being hidden. And so she comes to this guy and he tries to threaten litigation after being accused of murder and kidnapping charges. And the arrogance is just astounding. I hate seeing it. But she throws it back to him in like this masterful way, saying something to the likes of like, you might not answer to me or the federal government, but you do have a board of directors that you answer to. And she basically says, like, I wonder how they're going to feel when you get marched out in handcuffs on murder charges after resisting arrest. And then she slams his face onto the table. And I'm so happy for that. I mean, who doesn't love seeing a piece of work being put in its place? Now, this is fiction, so seeing someone get a little bruised ego by slamming their head onto a table, yeah, that's okay by me. So, you know, and before they get to that point, they have a raid on the facility, and you know, they save the girl with an antidote that Walter concocted because he was brilliant and able to realize, oh, if you put a bonding agent into such and such, then that will prevent the additional medication that they add to the time release capsules, because the time release capsules they activate all at once, making her into this giant microwave, which is what made people's brains cook and their eyes bleed. So Walter finds a cure. They go to the facility, essentially bust in some doors, capture some bad guys, and save the girl, save the woman. Um, so that being said, they have this awful experimentation to make human weapons, and we see the brilliance of the Fringe team working together. You see Olivia trying to deal with it being her birthday, and she's in a bad mood because she's waiting for the birthday card to arrive. And we also see that Peter is basically willing to go out on a limb, kind of to help Olivia. Um, she wants to do whatever she can to find the missing woman. And he suggests, hey, why don't you go to Nina Sharp from Essex Dynamic? They probably have a huge budget, so that way they know all of this seedy information. But she can't because she's in law enforcement, and she knows that Nina will say she has no idea what she's talking about, because that would be admitting to having this kind of information, which may or may not be legal. And so he hears her story about her childhood. He knows that she's having a rough day. So he goes to Nina Sharp and basically to ask for information on a location where the missing woman might be. Like, where might she be being held? And so I think it really speaks to Peter trying to, be a part of this team. Uh, he does it without Peter. Peter does this without Olivia knowing. Although she does eventually figure it out, because Dunham is a smart cookie, and it's hard to get anything past her. Um, I think it was nice to see Peter show this gesture to Olivia, because he basically lets her know that he appreciates all that she's done in looking out for him and his dad, Walter. And he basically says that he wants to be able to do the same, like to say, hey, I've got your back too. And I think it really helps to kind of further the relationship you see with Olivia and Peter, where you can see that, okay, they're starting to connect, not just colleagues. Maybe there's a friendship forming there, and there's an appreciation there for each other that I appreciate watching. And Fringe does it again. They have another great way to end the episode. Now we don't have in previous episodes they had this element of John Scott appearing. Is he a figment of the imagination? So we don't see that in this episode. Um, but Olivia gets home, and so I thought, because there was another episode where I remember watching it for the first time, thinking one of the episodes where she gets home and then John Scott appears in her kitchen. Okay, I was thinking, oh, she's getting home. Are we going to see another moment with John Scott appearing out of thin air? And she gets home and she shuts the door and she looks down and there's an envelope on the floor. She picks it up. It's just her name on the envelope. And she opens it up and it's a birthday card. So you're leaving this episode. It's kind of a terrifying thing to realize. Okay, her father is still out there, and this envelope was not postmarked. So we now know that her father knows where she currently lives, and that's the way they end the episode. And it just makes you again. They start great. The storyline in the middle is amazing, especially with all the dynamics between the characters, like the relationships that are being built, the tension or the humor, and then it ends in another like gut wrenching, scary way where you're like, oh, is this gonna be? Are we gonna see any more of this in the future? Um, so I think again, this story, a crazy plot. Um, and I love the way that they don't try to over analyze the science. They basically kind of explain this is how it works, and you basically say yes, that's how it works because that's what they're saying, and I don't need any more mumbo jumbo to try to understand. That's just part of the story, and I think they do such a great job at that. And I can't recommend the show enough. Episode 6, another fantastic episode. Um, this is an episode I think you could probably rewatch over and over. Um, and it's probably the one of the few episodes where you really see Olivia kind of not unhinged. That's the wrong word, but you can see that she loses her cool. Um, and for someone, I guess it's another reason to why people, or at least for me, I find her character really endearing because she's usually very straight laced. You know what she's thinking. She doesn't try to BS. But when something bothers her, it's like you can tell because she kind of puts everything on her shoulders. And when there's something weighing on her, you can kind of see it a little bit. And it's not like overly dramatic or anything like that, because I feel like if anything's going to be overly dramatic, it's going to be Walter or Peters, who have their anger is much more loud and in your face, and Olivia's more tempered, and I appreciate that type of character because I feel I'm more. Well, I hope I'm more like that. So, I'll stop right there. I love the show. This episode's fantastic. And if you are listening, I just want to say thank you so much. It means a lot for anyone that takes the time to listen to me ramble. I also talk about the TV show Survivor, which is currently in its 40th season. Uh, I also am talking about parenting in a pandemic over with our whiny parent talk, basically kind of giving updates and talking about the fears and everything else associated with this crazy time that we're living in. And I hope that everyone is doing okay. I hope that not only is this cathartic for me to kind of talk out into the ether, I hope that maybe in some way that this gives you a break from whatever you do on a daily basis, whether you have kids or not, whether you have to go into work or not, and to everyone that's doing their part to stay home. If you're an essential employee, whether you're in healthcare or if you deliver food for people like my family, I can only express how much I want to just say thank you for all that you do. And I will keep talking. I hope that you'll keep listening. Head over to whinyparent.com. You can follow our blog. If you just want to listen to the podcast, you can also follow our YouTube channel and subscribe whenever we update new podcasts. That's where we are sourcing it right now. And until next time, I hope to be back with another episode, the next episode in Fringe soon. And until then, I hope everyone takes care, stay home, stay safe, and I will see everyone on the flip side. Okay? Take care, everyone. Bye.